What is the creepiest thing that has ever happened in your house at night? Whether you were alone or not. I've had a few really creepy things happen at my place. One night, about 6 years ago, I was up at about 2 a.m. talking to a friend on MSN. She lived about 2,000 km away, and we would often stay up late chatting or talking on the phone. She had just logged off to go to bed, and I was just finishing up some homework before I went to bed as well. About 2 minutes after she left, I felt an odd presence next to me. I turned slowly and could see what looked like a silhouette, about her size, just standing there, about a meter away. I reached over, and as I touched the figure, I felt a strong pressure around my hand. As I was trying to contemplate what had just happened, it faded away. I was talking to my friend the next day, and before I had said anything about what I had felt, she began to tell me how she had collapsed on the way from the computer to her bed. Another creepy event in my house happened about 2 years ago. My girlfriend and I were the only ones home, my parents were overseas, and my grandmother, who used to live with us, was staying with her sister so that we didn't have to look after her. At 10 p.m., my girlfriend and I went into my grandmother's part of the house to get some drinks. They were stored in her fridge. As we walked towards her kitchen, both of us stopped at the same time and looked at each other. We had both just felt a very sudden chill and a feeling of dread. We found out a few days later that my neighbor's father, an elderly man, had fallen down the stairs and broken his neck. It happened at 10 p.m., and the stairs were directly opposite the window, just a few meters from where we had stopped. Occasionally, we still get chills in there around that time of night. My sister-in-law had some creepy experiences when she was younger too. She used to live in a duplex home with a staircase against the common wall. Once or twice a week, you could hear what sounded like a marble bouncing down the stairs. They asked the neighbors, but they had never heard anything. At around 18, she moved out and lived with her sister and brother-in-law. One night, she went into their room to get something and saw what looked like an orange light on the wall. Looking around, they couldn't find anything orange, and both the door and curtains were closed. Another day in the same house, they saw what looked like a man in army uniform sitting on the back fence, crying. After some research, they found out the house once belonged to a man who had died at war. His wife died just a few years before my sis-in-law had moved in. And the last creepy thing in this house, seriously Flurbo, that weird house. Her brother-in-law saw a man walk through the backyard and past the kitchen window towards the front of the house. He grabbed a knife and ran out the front of the house in time to see the man, who didn't seem to have a face, just a white head, walk through the closed front gate and turn along the footpath. He ran out to the gate and looked out, but there was no sign of anyone there. I used to read a ton when I was little, and when I was about 11 years old, I had fallen asleep one night while reading, so the light was on. For context, let's guess that I fell asleep at about 9 to 10. All of a sudden, it's after midnight and I wake up in a state of complete coherence. Even at the time, I realized this was strange. The light was still on from reading, and I look up to the door to see a man staring at me. He's very tall, over 6 feet, slicked back hair, palish face. He doesn't say anything, he just stares at me. I am overcome with a debilitating fear. I try to move, scream, anything, but absolutely nothing will come out. Then, just as instantly as I had awakened, he disappears, and that extreme terror subsides too, although, of course, I am still scared. Right about at this same moment, I am filled with the fleeting sensation of a warm, protective presence. I ran straight to my parents' room, told them everything, and slept on the floor next to my mom's side of the bed. I did not fall back asleep after this, so it was definitely not a dream. The only non-supernatural explanation is that I was hallucinating, although there was nothing out of the ordinary going on as far as medication or sleep habits. I know this sounds very imaginative, but I really wish this story was not true. To a degree, it still haunts me today. Normally, showering when I'm alone at home creeps me out. I still do it on occasion nonetheless, but after this incident last year, I've had a hard time coming to terms with the whole idea. At around 9 o'clock at night, the whole family was out, and I had just gotten in the shower. Everything was fine until about 5 minutes in when I heard knocking on the door, which made me jump and almost slip. I assumed somebody had come home and yelled to see who was at the door, to which nobody responded. Being sort of creeped out, I made sure to finish this shower in a hurry. Not a minute and a half later, I hear louder banging on the door. I yelled again and still got no response. So I got out of the shower just as the knocking stopped with shampoo all in my hair, and tried to see feet standing in front of the door by looking underneath the small space under the door. I couldn't see any. I jumped back in the shower this time, only to wash the shampoo out of my hair when I heard loud slamming on the door, as if someone was trying to get in. I jumped out of the shower as quick as I could and opened the door. Nobody was there. I searched the whole house, adrenaline pumping, and didn't find anybody. The doors were unlocked, which creeped me out even more. Nobody got home until about 11 that night. When I was in high school, we used to have LAN parties in the loft of our barn. It was not uncommon, after gaming literally all night, for me to leave my computer in the barn during the day while I slept off my attempts at carpal tunnel. The people who lived there before we did were cheap people and only put a weak fluorescent light in the front of the barn, at the very top, probably 35 feet up. It was old, and even on the best of nights, it would give off no more light than a full moon. My house was at the end of a heavily wooded road with only one other house on it, and they were pretty far away. Looking down the road at night, the asphalt looked marbled from the moonlight crawling through the limbs overhanging the road, the wind creating an ever-moving patchwork of light that confused the eye more than it aided it. On this particular night, I was home alone. My parents had taken my sister to a soccer tournament that lasted all weekend. On Friday night, with their permission, I had a LAN party that lasted from the second all of my friends could get over to my house after school to about 3 p.m. on Saturday, at which point, all of my friends left, and I went to the house to get some much-needed sleep. I woke up at about 10:30 p.m., ate some food, and was debating whether I wanted to watch some TV or make the 200-foot walk to the barn and my computer. By the time I decided that I would prefer video games to television, it was almost midnight. Walking to the barn at night was always a harrowing experience for me. I lived in the county with the third highest black bear population in the US, and we had plenty of cougars too. I know that getting attacked by one of these predators was pretty unlikely, but we found fresh scat on our property all the time, and we'd seen black bears hanging out by our pond several times. This was one of the rare nights where there were no coyotes howling and no bullfrogs croaking. When you're used to these things, they're not that bad, and their absence is the creepy thing. When I was about halfway to the barn, I thought I heard someone talking, but dismissed it as the wind and my imagination, which is prone to messing with me anyway. I firmly believe that ghosts and spirits do not exist and put my faith in those things which have been proven to exist. This is a reassuring thought when you think you hear voices at night. Ghosts don't exist, you're just being a scaredy cat. I got to the barn without incident, turned on the upstairs lights, and proceeded to listen to loud music and kill bots in CS 1.5 for about 3 hours. So it's now about 3 a.m. and I'm ready to go back to bed, knowing that if I don't get to sleep soon, I'll never wake up in time for school on Monday morning. I shut down my computer, stretch, and then take off my headphones. I hear a little girl singing. It's not a tune I recognize, and I can't quite make out the words. But it is unmistakably a 7 or 8-year-old girl singing a nursery rhyme. You know how sometimes when little kids are alone, they sing to themselves when they're doing something absent-minded, like coloring in a soft voice so they don't feel alone? She was singing just like that. I sat frozen in my chair for about 5 minutes, waiting for the sound to go away. I was freaked the flurbo out, but I don't believe in ghosts. I thought it was just some auditory artifact that was the result of going from listening to loud music to a near-silent environment. The singing doesn't go away. She just keeps singing the same minute-long song over and over. Another 5 minutes pass. She keeps singing. I focus on the song, hoping that if I concentrate on it enough I'll realize that it's just a strange insect or wind passing through some hole in the barn. Another 5 minutes. Concentrating on it has only caused it to crystallize in my mind. I could almost make out the words. I figured out that it was coming from near the front bay door. The barn was cut in half with a wall that separated the left half with all the hay and tack from the right half with random assorted junk. The front bay door was on the right side. The stairs up to the loft were on the left side, in the back. The bottom of the stairs is about 5 feet from a side door, and the light switch to the upstairs is at the bottom of the stairs. After 15 minutes of listening to this singing, I am thoroughly terrified. But what am I going to do? I'm not going to sleep up there, I have to go down. I walk to the top of the stairs. Looking down, I realized that I didn't turn on the downstairs light. The stairs exist right next to the door at the very back of the barn, so I'm looking into a corner. This corner is lit by a corridor of light from upstairs. Outside this corridor is pitch dark. I can still hear the singing coming from the other side of the barn, and even though I've moved further away from it, I'm no longer hearing it through the floor, so I'm hearing it louder. I summon all my courage and slowly walk down the stairs. I turn on the downstairs light. I'm staring in the direction of the singing, even though there is a wall in between me and it. I turn off the upstairs light, open the side door, turn off the downstairs light and close the door. I'm now outside the barn on the left side of the back, in pitch black because the only light is on the front. I had a flashlight, but I didn't want to turn it on. I don't know what reaction I was worried this might incur, but I didn't want to risk it. So far nothing I had done had caused even a momentary lapse in the song. I walked to the edge of the light, still on the left side of the barn. The singing continued from by the bay door. I couldn't quite tell if it was coming from inside the barn or outside. From where I was standing, parallel with the barn, my house was to my right and the singing and the road leading to my house was to my left. I decided that it was time to man up. I was going to go around the corner and walk toward the singing, not towards my house. As soon as I rounded the corner, the singing moved. It was no longer coming from by the bay door, it was coming from the woods by the road. I don't believe in ghosts, there's no such thing as ghosts. I thought and walked towards the road. As I got closer to it, it moved away, so I followed. The song was coming from about 30 feet in front of me and just a few feet off the road in the woods. I followed it this way, under the swaying branches obscuring the moon, with my flashlight off, about a quarter of a mile to where our road hit the main road. The singing continued across the street, in the woods on the other side. I just stood there listening to it for several minutes when I saw headlights about a mile up the road. I kind of backed up my road and hugged the trees. I didn't want the driver to see me and think I was a crazy person. As the car got closer, the engine drowned out the singing, and after it passed, the singing was gone. I honestly have no idea what it was. I still don't believe in ghosts. But I listened to it for long enough that I'm convinced that it wasn't just some weird pareidolia. It was the same minute-long song repeated. It's not like it was a fragment of a song over and over, it had a very specific melody that repeated. When I was a little kid, after I was sent off to bed, I would sometimes pull my desk lamp under the blankets and read books. My lamp was a crappy little red thing with the switch halfway down the cord, so I'd turn it on, put it on the bed, and then wedge the blankets into the foot of the bed, between the frame and the mattress, and then pull them over my head. My little makeshift tent ensured I had space to read, while not letting the light out and getting me in trouble for staying up past my bedtime. Occasionally, my mother would come in and tell me to go to sleep, but I got pretty good at being quiet, so I usually got away with it. One night, I was reading a Shel Silverstein book and click, my lamp gets turned off. I realize I've been found out by one of my parents and remember giving a little laugh, so I say, okay, I'm going. Bam, someone hits me hard onto my side. I almost fall out of bed. I was pretty pissed off, not scared at all. I throw the cover off, about to say ask what the heck was that for, but it's pitch black still, my door's still closed. After about a 2-second pause, I hear the light switch click again, and the light comes on, and there's nobody in my room, and the door is still closed. I know I heard the click, because when the lights came back, my eyes had followed the sound and was staring straight at the switch. I yelled, jumped out of bed and promptly slipped on all the water on the floor that wasn't there 20 minutes ago. I got up and remember thrashing a bit with my arms because I was convinced something else was there, but I got my door open and proceeded to drag my entire family downstairs into the living room to figure out what to do. They obviously just figured I had a bad dream, but my dad camped out in the living room that night because they could tell I wasn't going back upstairs. My mother spent 5 minutes cleaning up all the water and asking where my cup went. 20 years later, and I won't sit in bed with the covers over my head. Strange things happen around our home regardless of what house we are living in and have for several years. I always blame it on my grandmother who died when I was little. Anyways, several years ago, I lived in a trailer. At that time, I kept my boombox type stereo up on the closet shelf, no closet doors, and the only way to reach it was to stand on my bed. The stereo was turned off, and the volume dial was turned down to 12 where I kept it. This will be important in a minute. Well, this trailer park had been having problems with a prowler. I always kept the trailer locked up tight when I went to bed, and I had taken to sleeping with a knife under my pillow in case the prowler broke in while I was sleeping. One night, I was sleeping when around 3 o'clock in the morning, my stereo came on full blast, scaring the living bejesus out of me. I jumped up to turn it off. Noticing that the volume was set to 24, I scrolled it down to 12 before doing so. Heart pounding, I lay back down to sleep and I'm just starting to fall back to sleep when the darn thing goes off again. And the volume is again at 24. This time I get mad and say, "Dang it, Oma, don't play with the stereo at night," and I unplugged it. There, see how easy it is to get it to play now. I lay back down and it takes a good long time for the adrenaline to recede and sleep to come. It was only the next day while talking to a neighbor that it came to me that maybe there was a reason that my stereo had gone on like that. I like to think that it was my Oma scaring away the prowler. It never turned on like that again, although we did continue to have strange occurrences over the years.